progress.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Let's see if I can get this going again. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. Like I said, I'm going to go through just a couple of slides and then I'll open it up along the way for questions. By the way, I'm Dr. Darcy Snowden. I'm the director of NESSP, and I'm based in Central Washington University, so middle of Washington, Ellensburg. There was snow on the ground here as well when I woke up, but it's nice out now and sunny. Later, she's actually not here right now, but later we'll be joined by Mary Denman. She's the associate director. So you might be hearing from her during the challenge. And then Deanna Marshall is here. Say hello, Deanna. And she's our program manager. So you'll be hearing from her as well periodically as we go through the challenge. So this is an outline of what I'll quickly talk about. It's a lot of different things, but some people are going to be watching this as a recording. So I kind of wanted have an order there so they can skip through and get to the part that they're interested in. So how many people here, maybe you can use your Zoom hand thing. Is anyone here new to NESSP that's in person here or on the Zoom? Anybody? Is everybody?
So for the chat, we have only direct messaging. We don't have general messaging, just to let you know. And even in options, we have some limitations. The platform is different. For me, I'll say I've done the professional development last year with the IC World. It was really interesting. And I integrated some of the lessons with what I do with the cadets of the Civil Air Patrol as part of our astronomy studies and space exploration studies. We didn't do the challenge in itself, but we use activities from the program and some of the resources that you had. This year, we're hoping to at least do the integration, and potentially, if I get enough cadets into it, we'll like to do the challenge. The problem is the way I work with the cadets, I don't have a consistent group, like a classroom. Every month, I have different groups coming in, so it's difficult to do a challenge where there's a follow-up, or the activities went in a row. So it's up to now, what I've been able to do was more integration of activities and lessons into it. But I'd like to have some of them do that as a challenge, but we'll see how it goes.
There's a lot of different ways that educators and mentors are using the materials, and we're open to everything, to a lot of different ways to apply them, and just kind of whatever makes the most sense to you. I guess the advantage of doing the challenges I'll talk about is it makes your team eligible for prizes and some other events. But certainly if doing the full challenge doesn't make sense for you and your students, then you're welcome to use the materials. For those of you, maybe if someone watches it later that's new to NESSP, I just wanted to introduce the organization. We are funded by NASA, a program called Science Activation, whose whole purpose, the program in general, is to bring NASA missions and science to the people. So like as astronomy picture of the day, that's another SciAc program. So a lot of people have heard of that one. So ours is called NESSP, which stands for Northwest Earth and Space Science Pathways. And we're focused on bringing NASA science to underserved and underrepresented communities. We're focused on a lot of our programs. We're focused in on the Northwest. And you can see some of our partner organization here, like Susan here's from the University of Idaho. She's visiting us. But for the challenge, we actually run that nationally. So we also do some things nationally. And really, we're just hoping to increase teacher and educator capabilities. So if you've been wanting to do robotics with your students, but you haven't had the robot and maybe the skills to do that, we're hoping to increase that skill set, but also to go all the way down to the student and increase their expertise and aspirations. So we're hoping to get more kids interested in STEM is the long and short of it. And Rhodes is one of our programs. So it's one of the things that NESSP does. Some of you guys might be new to Rhodes. Some of you guys might be experienced since we launched it right before COVID, and then it had a couple of years during COVID, it's kind of had to change in order to adapt. But the one thing that kind of keeps it, the core of it, is this acronym ROADS, which stands for Rover Observation and Drone Survey. So every ROADS challenge has involved programming a robot, a rover, and using a drone. But it is for teams in grades 3 through 12 to model their own NASA mission. So we base the challenge off of a NASA mission, and we come up with mission objectives to kind of get students to model their own mission based on that science. And then again, the advantage of actually doing the challenge instead of just using the material is if you do the challenge and you document what your team has done and submit it back to NESSP, your team can be eligible for prizes. So this next Artemis Roads, our next challenge, is based off the Artemis mission, which hopefully you guys are getting really excited about. We had already one scrubbed launch, so there was a lot of media about the Artemis mission already. But the new launch, the new rescheduled date is coming up on the 14th. And that is the very first mission that is part of a series of missions that NASA is calling Artemis. So Artemis 1 is what's about to hopefully be launched, and that is a non-crewed flight of Orion, which is the spacecraft that humans are going to eventually travel into the moon and maybe eventually to Mars. Artemis 2 is the first crewed flight to orbit the moon. So the next step will be to put people in Orion, actually just have them orbit the moon like Apollo 8. So they won't land on the moon yet. But Artemis 3, which is supposed to happen in 2024, is when NASA says the first woman and person of color will actually land on the moon. And then just like Apollo, there'll be more missions. So probably another mission, like one or so per year, sending more equipment and people to the moon until eventually people are living and working on the moon. And the idea of this is there's lots more to do on the moon, lots more interesting science to be done, but we're also trying to prepare to send people to Mars. So we could talk for an hour on the Artemis mission. There's so much to learn, but that's kind of what we're hoping that you guys do during the challenge. So I just do want to point out there is an Artemis reading on our website where you can read about the Artemis mission, and we also link to a lot of the NASA videos and other materials. There's lots of good stuff from NASA on the Artemis mission. Let's see if I can, I've yet to figure out how to share Google Slides through a Zoom without doing it this way. Okay, so if you're new to Roads, really what it is, it's a set of what we call mission objectives that we're having your team of students try to accomplish. So there is a challenge manual, which you guys can download now and read from the website. And in the challenge manual, you can read, it's about a 1 or 2 page summary for each mission objective, kind of describe what it is. And then we have deliverables at the end, which is what we ask the students to put in their, what we call a mission development log, which is what they're actually going to submit to NESSP to prove that they did the mission objectives that they did. All of these mission objectives are related to the Artemis mission back to the moon. So, for example, we've got one where they're going to look at the moon's surface and try to figure out the challenges of driving on the surface related to the regolith and also slopes near craters. There's another one, paths to the moon. This is our drone one where they're actually going to fly along the Artemis trajectory. They're all designed to be really interesting, and there's a variety of different topics. There's also some life sciences in here. So we're trying to target the interest of a variety of students. I'm not going to describe them in detail because that would take too long, and we're just kind of trying to get through to questions here. But I thought I'd throw some fun pictures up, and these kind of give you a hint at some of the stuff that the students will do as they go through the mission objectives. Okay, I'm going to break for questions here. And we'll do a couple of breaks, but I just wanted to break and see if anybody has questions about either NESSP or the challenge in general or mission objectives.
I just have a question. If you have maybe like a 1-page printout for parents or something I could copy and paste into an email to I'm Angela, sorry, and I'm brand new to this.
Yeah.
Just heard about it. And so I'm just kind of jumping all in. And I'm going to devote half a year to do this.
Yeah.
With my 5th and 6th graders. So I just kind of want to advertise it as some really big thing, which it is, to the parents. So do you have something that I can deliverable to the parents?
Hi, Anne. We do have a brochure. I'm trying to remember if I
actually just mailed it to her today. Hi, Angela.
okay.
I sent out your there was a miscommunication for your PD, correct?
Yes. Correct.
Okay, I just sent that out to you today. Actually, you should be getting an email from FedEx with the tracking information, but I'll send that out later on too. In there should be a brochure, the brochure that Professor Snowden is looking for. And if it's not there, just message us and I'll drop some more in the mail to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It doesn't look like I linked it on the website, but that's something I could include. But you could just have parents look at the website as well. And this, by the way, for everybody, I can direct message everyone. So that's the page on our website that's about this Artemis challenge. So that's where you can find a lot of information, including information on the challenge manual. If you get the brochure that Deanna mailed you and you want a digital copy, we can definitely get you that too. Just send us an email, file on our computer. Any other questions about mission objective or?
I have a question. I do this in the after school program at my elementary school. And then in January is when kids re-sign up. So is it okay if some of my team members stay the same, but others switch out?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. We're pretty flexible on, how you manage your team. And we know, if you get 6 students to commit, even in the best case scenario, you might not have the same 6 students at the end, but just send us an email if your team has changed so we can update it on our end. Because sometimes we'll send out certificates and stuff like that. And we want to make sure we got the right set of names on them.
I also have, because it's a STEM club, I usually end up with 1st through 5th. So last year we weren't able to complete everything, but like everybody from 1st through 5th worked on it. So I hope that that's okay. I don't like to just have some of the kids. So basically they do what they can. So I know that it's meant for 3rd through 5th, but I did find that like some of the younger kids were really capable of doing a lot of the activities, just not everything themselves.
There's definitely stuff in this one as well that the younger kids could do. And it's always great to have the older kids help the younger kids learn. Like that helps the older kids learn, as I'm sure you know. So that's fine. We are like trying to suggest that if you do have a big team of like 10 or 20 students, you break it up into smaller teams. And the main issue with that on our end is if we have a team of like 20, and we kind of promise we're going to send out a prize, it gets hard for us if we have to send out big quantities of stuff. If that makes sense. Just for a whole range of like viewpoints. And then at that, like last year we took kids to Kennedy, but if a team of 20 wins, obviously that's a lot different than taking a team of 6. So just to keep that in mind. But this material is out there. We're not like looking over your shoulder, making sure you follow all the rules. It really is just for you to help your students. So use it the best you can. Yeah. Other questions on mission objectives?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm brand new to this as well, and I actually am an ELA teacher, so I have no idea about some of this. I just have some kids that are very interested in space and rovers, and I told them I would take over for this. So we're going to try it this year. They are bugging me to start. Is there a certain start date for this?
We'll talk about when we're going to ship supplies. So you might not have all the stuff yet, but you might. I don't know if you're in a school where we've sent supplies previously.
We haven't done it before. So.
Okay. But the short answer is yes, you're welcome to start. And there are several mission objectives that you can certainly get started on that don't require you to have the supplies that we're going to send the team. They're going to have to be patient in terms of as the challenge goes for getting team recognition and stuff like that. So we'll start some of that activity after January. But yeah, it's up there. If there's like, for example, if I go back a slide here, I can actually, I'm ready to slides. You know, the Pack Your Moon Kit, you can definitely start on that one. You can definitely start the MDL. Some of the like even some of this one, Observant or Investigate the Moon's Surface, that just uses an online tool. So yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Hi, I'm Jack Erickson. I did angles way back in the day, and we did roads on Mars, both iterations of that. And last teacher, I missed your name, but like my high school kids, I just say, here's the challenge if you want to do it. And literally, I don't know much about it, but I mean, it's written well enough that the kids can kind of get after it and figure it out. And they got to go to Kennedy last year, so they, you know, from the Roads on Mars challenge. So there's something about, you know, the kids can just do it. You don't have to micromanage and guide them through it. You know, I'm there to house the supplies and give them a place to meet, open the school when they need to practice flying, when there's no one here to hit with a drone and all those things. But it's definitely a kid-friendly manual.
Well, that's great to hear. It's Kyle, by the way. And
hi, Kyle.
Nice to meet you. I'm planning on just basically letting them have the roam of the school. So they're smarter than me when it comes to STEM. So
yeah, and we're not looking for like, there's no test at the end, right? We just want them to have fun and learn something. So everyone starts at a different level and they get a change in what they learn, what they understand, and what they're interested in. So yeah, and kids figure out the robots. I think mentors and teachers get nervous about programming the robots, but you just have to, they're Legos. The kids love them and they figure it out faster than we do. Okay, any other questions about mission objectives? There's more.
My question, it's kind of on the side. So if we were to do the full program, about how many hours would you think we should allocate? Like a range. If we are talking about students that are middle school, high school students, like 12 to 15 years old.
That's a really good question.
Without giving a number of hours, we do know that folks have successfully done it with meeting for 1 or 2 hours per week after school from January to like that April, May time. So that should be sufficient. The robots will definitely take a little bit longer, right? But we do know that folks have done, as I said, 1 or 2 meetings per week and gotten through everything in that amount of time.
Perfect. That gives me an idea. Thank you.
Sorry, me again. My kids,
go ahead.
Both times that, well, the 3 times I've been involved with their programs, like the kids get into it. And it's like, Mr. Erickson, we're having a slumber party at Katie's house. Can we have all the stuff? And okay. And then the parents call me and like, yeah, they worked for it for 6 or 8 hours just this one time. They did that a couple times. They get like really dialed into it and it's fun. They want to keep after it. So brace yourself.
That's great. Well, hopefully they enjoy this one as much as previous ones. Okay, so I'm going to move on and we can come back and there'll be more time for questions at the end. But I want to talk about, so some of you guys are like, how much time is it going to take? So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're recognizing students' work this year. We're calling it the levels of achievement. And this might seem confusing at times, but the foundation of it is to allow how people use this to be fairly flexible so that people, as you guys are hearing, there's a lot of different ways people are going to interact with the challenge. So we want to keep it relatively flexible. We also want to recognize students for their work. So there's 4 different levels of achievement. The first one is launch pad status, and then low Earth orbit, lunar orbit, and lunar landing. Basically, you can move from one status to another by completing more mission objectives, okay? So here, again, and this is all spelled out in the manual, but there's a couple of optional checkpoints early on in the challenge, and we've always done this, like this was true for roads on icy worlds. We had particular mission objectives be checkpoints. These ones, there is some things. We do want the teams to complete the mission patch, and start their MDL. But then they can complete any other MO by February 15th in order to reach Launchpad status. So they can just send that, they can send evidence of their MDL or a video or something like that to NESSP on the website, just to kind of show us that they completed that. And then, so that's got an early deadline, March 15th, but it is optional. But if you want to say, hey, students, like, let's try to get this done by March 15th, those are prize, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. The next level is low Earth orbit. So they just have to complete another mission objective, anyone that they want to do by March 15th. And then these two are associated with the final deadline. So May 10th is the final deadline to submit what you did for the challenge. So if teams completed, the mission patch, did their MDL, and then they did 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 total of the other mission objectives, and they show evidence that they participated or watched at least one of the NASA expert talks, we say that they reached lunar orbit. And then if they did all of the mission objectives and did 2 of the NASA talks, then we say they completed lunar landing. Okay. And again, evidence of this on final submission. The prizes or rewards for this work are, if teams reach Launchpad status, you guys will send us your mission patch and we'll kind of congratulate you on NESSP social media so the teams and the parents can see that. Low Earth orbit, we'll send you a little surprise package, nothing big, but something from NASA in the mail. And that, again, will motivate students through the challenge. So those are earlier deadlines. And then for the final submission, if the teams reach lunar orbit or lunar landing, they're invited to a hub event. And so this year, if you guys did Angles, we did in-person hub events. Susan was a part of that, right? Were you part of Angles? Yeah. Okay, we're going back to that because COVID, I think, has reduced its levels enough that we can make some, we can go back to big in-person events, which is really nice for the students, and it's nice for us to recognize students in person. It's a lot easier for us. So if teams complete a sufficient number of the mission objectives, they will be invited to a local hub event. And we do have a bunch in the Northwest. We're gonna have one in Arizona. We're probably gonna have one in the South and one in Texas. And the details about those will come out a little bit later. But also, if they complete these 2 levels, we're going to have a virtual meeting with an astronaut in May. So they'll be invited to that. And only the teams that complete all the mission objectives will be eligible for a trip to Kennedy. And we'll do a drawing for that at the actual hub events. If your team wants to, you're not close to a hub, or you can't travel to a hub for whatever reason, we're also still allowing teams to submit their final challenge online as well, just like we've been doing during COVID. Okay. So I'm sure there will be lots of questions along the way about the team recognition. Again, even though it could be a lot simpler if we were just like, hey, all the teams had to complete all the mission objectives, but we want to let you guys know that it's okay if your team doesn't complete all the mission objectives. Okay, not everyone has that much time, or maybe the students don't have interest in all of them. Maybe you don't have all the supplies, whatever the reason is, that's okay. So you don't have to complete them all to come to the hub event, but we do ask that you complete most of them. You don't have to submit those things by February, March 15th, but you can use that to motivate your team. Yeah, and you don't have, if you can't make, for example, one of the NASA expert talks live, you can watch it, the recording of it with your team. Okay, questions about levels of recognition, prizes?
I was wondering if we were going to have access to this presentation, that we might use parts of it to get our kiddos excited.
Yeah, for sure. So it will be posted on YouTube, but I can also, we can send you, I'm fine with sending you the actual presentation, the Google Slides as well.
There's a question in the chat.
Team members, would the travel just be for 3rd through 5th?
The travel to the hubs?
Hubs, or if we were to win and go to Kennedy, would that have to be the older kids?
Yeah, we probably, and I will just be honest about this right now, we're probably not going to take younger kids to Kennedy. So, and I'm sorry about that. We did that last summer. It is really hard to travel with kids that are that young. And there's some rules regarding what we can do funding wise. Like we can't pay for the parents to accompany them with our NASA funds. So
basically elementary school wouldn't be eligible for that.
yeah, we'd have to reward you guys with something different.
Okay.
And I will say, yeah, Kennedy is really fun, but yeah, for the really little kids, what I would say to motivate them, you know, we have a lot of teams that compete year after year, so they can age into that trip. But yeah, that's where we are right now, and I'll let you know if we change our mind. But hopefully that makes sense. It is hard to travel with the little ones across the state, especially when you're traveling with high school kids. The mix is kind of interesting. Any other questions? No?
Yeah, sorry, it's Rajiv here. Quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe I might have misunderstood, but you shared 4 levels, right? And each of them had a different name, lunar and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first level, right? The first milestone, that what comprised of having, I saw there was mission 01, 08 and so on. So is that like there are 3 specific missions that you got to complete to be able to say that, okay, you've completed that milestone, or was there a series of?
Yeah, so for that one, this one does have specific ones that we want them to start first.
Mm-hmm.
So mission objective 8 is make the mission patch, which is a fun, fairly straightforward one. Mission objective 1 is what we call mission development log, and that's actually how the students document their progress through the challenge. You can't really do any of the challenge without starting that one.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 2 specific ones, and then we say they can, any other one they want to start on can be the third one there. Does that answer your question?
It does. And
Okay.
just to follow up on that. So on the second milestone,
Mm-hmm.
how many missions does that need to qualify?
Just one more. So in
just one
total,
more.
they
Okay.
will have done 4 of the mission objectives.
Oh, okay. Perfect. That answers it. Thank you.
Yep.
So the mission objectives are not meant to go in numerical order?
I will say, when we're like, hey, let's put everything on social media, I was like, oh, it'd be fun if we could put their mission patch on social media. So maybe it would have been smart to put the mission patch earlier. I will admit that. The other ones, yes and no. Like, you don't have to do them in order, and that's like a frequently asked question. There are some that you could do anytime. Like you could do pack your moon kit anytime. You could do observe and explain the moon anytime. The ones that have to do with the rover, you actually should do those in order. So you should do MO3 before you do MO7.
And is there somewhere in the manual that explains that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it is noted in there and in the companion course. I will say that MOs were set up in this order because a couple of the earlier ones that are time-based, like the Observe the Moon, it is over a long amount of time. And if you're doing an experiment for life in closed systems that takes a long amount of time, that's why we put those earlier to give folks time, if you do want to do like an extended experiment or something like that. But yeah, they don't have to be. But if you're wondering like, well, then why are they in this order? That's why. Just if you go through and you find that you want to start, MO2 and then be working on that and observing it and then move to the next one, that you can, and it makes sense. But you can certainly do them out of order with that exception of 3 and 7.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of these you could be doing at the same time.
Mm-hmm. You definitely could be. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like Mary said, if you're in a perfect world, you do them in order. But yeah, it might be fun to ask your team. I mean, the challenge manual is kind of long, but it's not insanely long. For really little kids, it'd probably be a lot to ask them to read the whole thing. But you could ask your team to kind of make a schedule. They know how much time they have, and so they could kind of prioritize how they want to get through the mission objectives as well. But yeah, if you want to do them out of order and that makes sense for you, that's okay as well. Okay, any other questions about, I guess we were out here. Team recognition.
So, my apologies, I joined the meeting late. Last time my students looked, there wasn't anything posted. Is all this now posted on the website, the manual, the mission objectives and all of that?
Yes, it is. And
Okay.
I just put the link in there. I can re-put it in, or if someone else wants to put that.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, that's helpful for me. And then it would be helpful for the people who participated in this meeting just to send out those slides, but I think you already said you're going to do that. So
Yeah, I can do that. And in fact, I can post them on that page that just got sent as well. All right, I'm going to move along. Again, there'll be more time for more questions at the end. So if you have them, you can stop me there. Oh, and I should have updated this. So this is online as well. There's a tab on that website that says schedule. And this is the schedule for the challenge. Things that I want to highlight, registration closes January 11th. So there's quite a bit of time to register teams still. Okay, and one mission advisor can register multiple teams. So if you're already mentoring a team and you got them meeting in a space for a certain amount of time and you think more students might be interested, you can go ahead and sign up more teams and have them work together, but as two separate teams with two separate team numbers. There's a lot of stuff in here that is optional. So I'm just going to highlight the required stuff and then I'll go through some of the optional things. And this is not actually required, but the initial submissions that we talked about in order to get prizes kind of along the way. One is on March 15th. The one you really want to keep your eye on though is the final submission deadline. That's May 10th. So that's when we're really going to ask you to send us whatever you have for your team. And then again, if you reach those last two levels, you'll get invited to both this Meet an Astronaut and Hub events. And these are quite far away still. So this is like next summer. So we don't have all of the details figured out in terms of the schedule of when these will occur, but all of that information will be updated on our website, you know, in the early part of the year. So just look out for that. These other things are kind of like where you guys are now. So Mission Advisor Support 1, that's another time when it's optional, but you guys can join us to learn about how to complete the challenge. We're probably going to focus in on some of the earlier mission objectives during this first one. And then the second one will focus in on some of the rover and drone ones and the final challenge and answer questions related to those. And then throughout, there's something called Meet a NASA Expert. I'll talk about that right at the end. This one, actually, we just had to reschedule, so I should have changed the date on that, which I can easily do. But this is actually going to happen on December 7th. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But that's what this challenge schedule looks like. And again, updates will be on our website on the events, or you can follow us on social media for updates on the schedule. The next thing I wanted to talk about was supplies, which is a lot of people have questions about supplies. When you register, you can request these supplies. These are the ones that we are using in the challenge. So some of the mission objectives require having access to these, although even some of these supplies you don't absolutely have to use if your team wants to go a different way or wants to do it a different way. Supplies are limited, so we can't promise supplies to every team. So for example, if you are a mission advisor that has participated in the past and you have supplies that will work for this challenge, we already sent you an EV3, please use that because there's other teams that need support as well. And EV3s actually work really great for this challenge. They've got more stuff in them actually than the spike kits. So they're gonna be a great robot for the challenge. And we may not, like I said, even in that case, we may not be able to support all teams. We have a limited amount of supplies and it's kind of first come, first serve. Here's some pictures of some of the supplies that we're sending out. Some exciting things are, other than the rover and the drone, is a little pack of lunar simulant, which is made in a lab and it's meant to replicate lunar regolith. So students will get to experience that and touch it and measure its properties. And then there is a life sciences experiment. So that's why we're sending out grow lights. There is information on all of these on the website. So if you are at a school that has resources or maybe has some funds to purchase these materials, you can purchase them yourself. And we do provide links to where you can purchase them on our website. Yep. Go ahead.
Quick question. You mentioned something about EV3. Sorry, what's EV3? What's the
Sorry, that's a little jargony. Yeah, Spike, or they're Lego robots. So Lego robots, the programmable ones, used to be called Mindstorm EV3s, and then they've retired that type of robot and replaced it with Lego Spike robots, which is what's shown right here. So EV3s, a lot of teams that have participated in the past might have EV3s because that's what NESSP has sent out previously.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we still use the Mindstorm?
Yes, please do. Yeah, like I said, it does actually, it'll work great for this challenge. So yes. Let's see. There is some additional support. I mentioned some of this already in the schedule, but there are some mission advisor support sessions. That's kind of like what we're doing here. Help you guys out. These are particularly important near the end when you're like, how do I prepare my team for the final challenge, or the logistics of getting to the hub events, all that stuff. We'll have support for that along the way. There is also what we call office hours, and these are extremely casual. If you guys remember being in college, like your professor was just sitting in their office waiting for you to come by. That's what these are. So we are available to you online. It's either going to be NESSP staff, or if we train up some students, it may be students. You can join. You can just send your team, so your students can just contact us directly and just ask questions about what you're trying to do, or you can even just show off, like, look how cool what we did is. That's fine too. We also appreciate seeing what you're doing. So those will be available. And there are already a few tutorial videos on our Facebook, on our YouTube page, not on the Facebook one, but we might post some more later. We always have a goal of making more helpful videos. We did certainly last year, and then we run out of time. But as we see the need, we may post some tutorial videos on YouTube. Okay, so that's some extra support you have for your team. Let's see. Yep, another opportunity to ask questions. I'll just address the first one here. When will I get my supplies? So if you are a new team that's registered and you don't have any supplies at all, like I said, we're going to start shipping them in early December. So you have to wait a little bit, but you'll get them just in time for Christmas, or maybe a little bit after. But don't wrap them up because they are a loan from NASA. So that will make your students think they were a present. So, other questions that we often get: can I buy my own supplies? Absolutely. Can I use another robot, drone, etc.? Yes, if you have a drone already in your classroom or just at home or whatever, as long as it's a safe drone to use, it's not a huge, dangerous drone that we have to file FAA regulations for, feel free to use it. And any robot will work. It doesn't have to be one of the ones that NESSP's used in the past. We just ask that you use a programmable and not a remote controlled one, because that would be cheating. And yeah, that our metrics, if supplies get limited, we do try to support schools, teams in underserved areas, preferentially. Questions on supplies? Go ahead.
Yeah, will you send out like a confirmation if you are planning to send supplies to certain teams?
Yeah, we will do that. Yeah, we need to actually go through and sort through the people that have registered already and see what the needs are. But yes, we can do that.
Great, thank you.
What's the cost of the supplies, please?
It really depends on what you choose to purchase. So the Lego Spike robots are about, I think, $350. That's kind of the highest priced item. But you can use other programmable robots that are much cheaper. Mary, what is the name of the one that you guys used in the past? It's the
MBOTs.
The MBOTs, yeah. MBOTs are a lot cheaper. They work just fine. And then the drones are pretty cheap. You can buy a drone for like $30. That would work for this challenge. Okay. Those are the big supply, the more expensive things. Everything else is fairly cheap, except for the CO2 detector. If you don't get supplies and you don't end up with a CO2 detector, you can do that mission objective without it. It's not really required. So I wouldn't go run out and purchase one of those.
Do you have the list of material, maybe like in the Canvas course?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what is needed. Like I'm thinking especially like the lunar regolith simulants, like if we were to order that, so that we know what to order exactly.
Yeah, so it's not in the Canvas course, but I did put a link on the website. Let me put it in here. So if you go, I just put it in, I directly messaged it to Ryan. Sorry, Ryan. Okay. I just put it in the chat. So if you go to this link on the web page, it does show this is where this image is from. And then if you scroll down a little bit, there are links even to where you can buy the lunar simulant. It's the same simulant that they actually use for another NASA project where they're trying to grow plants in the soil. So, but it's the same stuff. So you can buy that. And I think it's about $30. And then there's also some tutorial videos that are helpful, particularly with the fold scopes. Okay. But yeah, get creative. Like you can be, there's a lot of flexibility in the mission objectives about what you use to accomplish them.
Well, and there's also that ahead of time, if we know, I'm a geologist, so that's why I'm kind of asking about that. Depending on what we do, sometimes I have the students recreate, if we know ahead of time, the granulometry of the material, the type of composition, we will have fun and go sample different type of sand or gravel or things like that and try to reconstitute our own material in a certain way.
Yeah. That would be a great thing to do. And if you look actually on that website where we bought the simulant, they make educational simulant, but they also make simulant for like real science labs. Like NASA buys their simulant from this company. And so there's some pretty technical data on that website that might be fun to show the students in terms of the mix that goes into the simulant. But
okay, so I look into that because there's also the mineralogy of the sand and all these things. So depending on the age group, we can go more or less in depth depending on what they're interested in. My thing is because I have very much of a Montessori approach, I try to have it flexible to be able to follow the interest of the students. If they get very much into the geology, can't really say geology because it's the moon, should be senology or something like that. But I want to be able to follow them and sort of bring something that is artificial, have something that is more natural looking and more that will replicate more the material. But if they're not interested in it, then or not as interested in it, I can stay more superficial to try to follow the interest trend.
Yeah. For that mission objective, by the way, what we're having the students do is characterize that simulant so they can, it's kind of like come up with another simulant, right? Because we can't buy enough of that simulant for the teams to, for example, try to drive their rover through it. But if they can identify another material that's similar to the regolith, then they can use that as their own test material for driving on the moon. So, but yeah. We've had a lot of teachers tell us different things they might like to do around the simulant. So go for it. There's lots of cool stuff you can do. All right, I'm going to keep moving. Let me pause here again just to see. Does anyone else have questions about supplies?
Yeah, Darcy, is there not like a mat this year?
There is not a mat this year. Yeah, it's different. That is a change for the year. So yeah, we started out with angles with a huge map. That I'm sure you're familiar with. That was a little bit unwieldy to ship and print. So over the COVID years, teams were making their own maps, and that was really cool as well. This year, teams are more making a challenge course. So in the materials, there's some links to NASA's SLOPE lab, which is actually a test lab for the lunar rovers, or if you've ever heard of JPL's Mars Yard. So the teams will actually be creating their own test beds, either in lunar regolith-like material or with slopes. How steep of a slope can my robot drive up? And then at the final hub events, there will be a bigger, it's not really a map because it's not going to be flat, but we'll build a course for the rovers to drive through. And we'll have more information about that later in the challenge, what the characteristics are. So you'll know what that looks like, and you can even build something to recreate it and practice on with your team, but you don't need to build a whole crater. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it is a little different, and hopefully people enjoy making the map was really cool and it had a lot of interesting math in it. So hopefully this is just as interesting. for folks.
Well, the University of Arizona printed the angles map for me.
Yeah.
And then we got to the hub event and it was slightly the wrong size. So
there we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not good. Yeah.
But when the Roads on Mars mat came out, like everybody that ever walked into my classroom was like, "What's that?" So it was kind of a fun tool to get kids excited about STEM stuff.
Well, they still have to learn how to program the robot. So if you have a new set of students and you have the old maps, you can use them and be like, here's a challenge as you're trying to figure out how to program, like drive around this. So definitely still utilize them. We still have them here at Central as well. And we use them for outreach and stuff like that. So yeah, other questions?
I have a question about the programming, and please forgive my ignorance. So are they using any kind of specialty software to program?
Yeah, the Lego robot comes with software. So easy to download, super easy. You can run it on iPads, Chromebooks, whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep. I just wanted to make sure because we just have Chromebooks. So
yep.
Great. Thank you.
Mary, did you have anything to add to that?
I'll just say that all of the Lego software at this point, they did upgrade the EV3 software as well. So it all looks the same. It's all Scratch based, which is a specific type of essentially block programming. So yeah, exactly like you said, Darcy, easy to use. You can download the software right from Lego Education, and yeah, it works on every platform.
And by the way, I'll
like you said,
mention
Darcy,
as well,
easy
Lego
to use.
has a lot of
You can
tools
download
built into the software to help the students learn. So take advantage of those.
Is there a need of any programming there? And if yes, what language do they need to do that on?
No, it's a great way to introduce students to programming. Like this could be their very first experience with programming. If you have students that have a lot of programming experience, you can, if you have the Spike robot, program it with Python, but that is no way recommended for new students or required for the challenge.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. And it's actually, by the way, if any of you guys have not programmed before, it's also a great way for adults to learn about programming. So dive in there. Okay, any more questions about supplies? Can I keep moving? We can come back if there's more at the end. Okay. All right. Moving along. Okay. I'm glad Mary's here because she is our companion course expert. I did want to mention, if you look online, some of you guys are teachers in formal education environments. One of the things that we do when we make the challenge every year is we make a companion course to accompany it. Okay, so when you look at the challenge manual, every mission objective is paired with a lesson from the companion course. And what the companion course is, it's an NGSS aligned set of lessons that are organized in units that are ready to go in a classroom. If you're a teacher that wants to teach something, you need to convince your principal that this is still hitting the standards. That's what these are all about. If you're doing just the challenge and you're like, God, I wish I had more details or more resources or just more to do with my students, you look at the companion course. You don't have to do the whole lesson like you're in a classroom, but there is a lot of resources in there that you can use with your students. And yeah, the biggest thing I just want to make clear is that you don't have to do the companion course to do the challenge, but it is there as a resource if you want to do it. And if you're meeting with your students for like, if they really want to take off and do extra, again, this is here, more material, more stuff to do, more fun to be had. Yeah, and I definitely recommend, even if you're not teaching it, to check out this resource and just see what's available. Let's see. Does anyone have questions on the companion course? I'm not really monitoring. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I was just wondering if, and again, I apologize. I've only glanced at some parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if it comes with any kind of, if there are handouts or documents students need to complete, are those in there or do we have to create those ourselves?
No, they're in there. So all the handouts are integrated in there and they are usually at the end of the lesson. Yeah. Okay. Mary, do you want to say anything else about that?
No, I think you covered it. Everything that you need to do the activities is right in the document for you.
Yeah. It's fairly complete. Like if some lessons have slides with them that you can present to the students. The materials are clearly listed that you need.
Yeah, they include any links for supplemental materials. They also have, each one of them usually has kind of an expand activity. So if you wanted to do even more, we give you some links out to other activities. So yeah, it's pretty comprehensive.
Thank you.
And even if you're a teacher, like some teachers say they don't have time to do all of the companion course or maybe all of parts of the lesson that they are doing. Again, it's however you want to use it. It's a resource that's available. So you can change it and make it work for you. All right, moving along. How to register. I don't know if anyone here has not registered. Maybe you guys already have, but it's pretty straightforward. You can just go to the website, the same link I sent earlier, register your team. You can either register for the companion course, well, either or. So you can register for the companion course if you're a teacher and you're just going to use the companion course in the classroom. There are some benefits to going and registering as a teacher using the companion course. You can also register a team. Okay, so if you're just going to advise a team of students, you can go in there and register your team. If you are mentoring multiple teams, you should go in and register each team separately. So each of them get their own team number. We can track each of their progress separately. We have teachers that are doing both. So they're going in and registering for the companion course, but they're also mentoring a team or teams of students. So they might have to go in there a couple of times. You don't have to know all of the students that will be on your team when you register. So if you know you're going to do it and you're pretty sure you can recruit some students, then you can go ahead and register and recruit later. You don't need to know too much. You do need to know whether or not you are going to request supplies. So we'll ask you that, and then just kind of standard stuff, name, address, etc. And then one thing is we do track you with your team number. So everyone gets a number on our end. So try to write that down or at least keep the email handy. And if you email us and you tell us what your team number is when you ask us a question, we'll give you brownie points, or at least we'll be very pleased on our end, because then we know how to find you in our system.
Professor Snowden, you had a question. What happens if they didn't write down their team number?
You should have it in an email, right? It should respond when you register. So it's in the email that you got after you registered. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about this?
I have a question. If I want to register several teams now, because I'm going to take my class and split them into teams of 4, you know how kids love to customize their own names. For now, can I just go team 1, team 2, and then can I change the team name later?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. That's fairly
so
common.
We can update your registration on the back end. So either a change in team name, a change in your demographics. Like let's say you put in your school's demographics or your district's demographics and you want to tell us that it was more specific. We can change any of that for you. Just shoot us an email.
Okay, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, how many teams did you have last year, or how many are anticipating this year?
We had about 120 register last year, right, Mary? And then this year we already have more than that registered. So we're hoping, I mean, the more the merrier. But I would like to see, it's hard to commit to numbers, but it would be great if we had 200 teams. Yeah.
Right. And how many out of the 120 made it? I mean, to the last.
To the end? That's a good, I think the completion rate last year, well, it was still a COVID year. So, but yeah, not all of them. I'll say that. Lots of people were not able to complete for various reasons. But that's one of the reasons why we're adding a little bit more flexibility into what we consider being complete. And again, it's always been that way, but I just want to make it clear. On our perspective, complete doesn't mean that every team perfectly does every one of the mission objectives. Complete for your team is whatever that looks like for your team. Okay, so this is not supposed to be like a very rigid, everyone needs to get to here challenge. So if it comes May and your team has only done 4 mission objectives, please submit what they've done and we will still, send them some recognition for that work.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Which brings me to my next slide quickly. If you do register a team or when you register a team, you will be contacted by Horizon Research Inc. to take a pre-challenge survey. So this is actually for your students. Okay, so NESSP is funded by a NASA grant, and part of that, what's required on our end for getting those funds to support educators and students is to actually do an evaluation to figure out if our program is effective or how to make it more effective. So your participation in these surveys actually really helps us continue to be in good standing with NASA and continue to get money to support you guys. And it's also just really interesting for us to see what works and what doesn't work for students so we can adjust and change in subsequent years. So if you get contacted by Horizon, please do respond. If you're registering and you don't have your team yet, they understand that. So just do the pre-challenge survey when you do have your team. It's very fast, very quick. Just ask them a few questions, and then at the end of the challenge, they'll get another one, and we'll see if they actually learned something. Okay, so it might be interesting for you too. I want to advertise one more thing, and then I'm almost to my last bit here. So NASA expert talks, these are really cool, okay? I just want to emphasize how cool it is for students to get to talk directly to people that work for NASA. The first one was supposed to be next week, but they rescheduled the Artemis launch, and that caused us to need to reschedule our Artemis launch expert because she got called to go to Kennedy because she is the communications expert for NASA. So she's working around that launch. But our first expert talk now is rescheduled for December 7th. It's from noon to 1 p.m. Pacific time. And I know that doesn't work for everybody, but we have to pick a time. And then there will be 2 more throughout the challenge. So we will advertise those to you. The talks are aimed at middle school level students, so they're not super high level. And we really want the students to understand how these people got to work for NASA. So they will talk a little bit about like how they got to where they are, as well as either the mission or the engineering or the science around it. I'm really excited about this first one because we rescheduled it. She will actually have been at the launch, the hopefully successful Artemis 1 launch, and she could tell us all about it, which is, I think, really cool. So I just wanted to advertise that. If you can't make it with your students, like if your students and you can't watch it at this time, these talks are recorded and you can watch them on Facebook or YouTube later. And you can also go on the website and submit questions early. So if you know you're not gonna be able to make the talk, you can go and your students have questions, you can submit them, and then we'll ask her to answer those questions during the live stream. Okay. All right, that's my last one. Sorry, guys, thank you. I guess it's just an hour now, but I'm open for more questions, and there are some, just like I said, a few people submitted questions that aren't here or couldn't make it, so I'll address those as well at the end. But does anyone who's here have questions for us?
Yeah, Darcy, I may have another question. So in terms of, so the team that I have, right, we have is actually a bunch of, high schoolers. So they're pretty excited. Mm-hmm. So apart from the learning that they get, right, how do you feel it's going to be helping them out in terms of either essays or once they apply to the colleges, to the universities? Is that going to aid them in certain fashion once they go through this whole exercise?
Yeah, okay, I'll give you a couple examples of why I think it might aid them. Okay. Mm-hmm. The first is, and we have this, I'm a professor at college, and I tell my college kids that as well. Anytime you can do anything out of a formal learning environment that involves problem solving and teamwork, and it's a long scale, this is a project that's going to take months, you have stories to tell. Okay, so these students are going to have to write admission essays. They're going to say, like, I really want to be a NASA engineer, right? But that's pretty boring if you don't have anything to back that up. But if you participate in an activity like this, they can say, I know I really want to be a NASA engineer because I worked on this project with this other set of students and we had this issue, but this is how we resolved it. And then I got to meet this NASA expert and I learned about this other thing that I think is really interesting. So just the experience, I think, is huge for students. And it's another thing they can put on their CV or their resume about something that they have done or accomplished. Obviously, if they're one of our top teams, that's something they can put on there as an accomplishment and an award. So yeah, I think all of those are good reasons. there's not too many things
Absolutely.
that a high school student can do that replicates what it really is like to be a scientist or an engineer for NASA. Like this is what this is all about. Of course, it's a lower level. They're not building the SLS, but it's a similar work process, right? The people that built the SLS had to work with groups of peers over a very long time and do a lot of problem solving and be creative.
And I the students that like started their capstone research project, AP capstone project from ideas they got during this, and they've kind of changed their career path because they want to do something more STEM. So I think there's
That's
a lot
awesome. That's why we're here. Yes. And honestly, I like to say that space science is the gateway drug to like any type of science. So you might have a student be interested in this project because they love space, but they might end up wanting to be a doctor, go to medical school, or do something that, you know, isn't maybe working for NASA, but that's great as well. Or they might decide they don't like STEM at all. And hey, that's a good data point too. It's all good. Any other questions about?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So back to the project itself. So kids get creative and they want to do like, I don't know, like model of the moon and like the house for the astronauts and stuff. So is it going to be helpful for them, do you think, to include in the project, or it has to be kind of left up? They can focus more on their mission objectives?
I would say in some cases what you described, like if they wanted, for example, if they wanted to like build like a big paper mache model of the moon, you could maybe use that in the drone mission objective. If they wanted to design a habitat for people to live on the moon, that kind of works for our life in a closed system mission objective. So if they can make it part of one of the objectives, yeah, submit it. Do we want like a whole bunch of extra stuff? Probably not. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, but maybe you don't need to submit it to us as part of the challenge. If we have 150 teams, it's tough if we get like 100-page MDLs, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Certainly let them go where they want to go with their what they're interested in. But of course, like any project, you have to set some guidelines to make sure they can complete things that's being asked. Yeah.
And regarding the length of their documents that they have to submit, so how big it can be? What is the limit for the?
So we put a 40-page limit on the mission development log this year, and that's described in the manual. So that's pretty good. So they'll have to be a little selective about how they describe each mission objective. Like I said, you know, if they took 20 pictures, maybe they could pick the best 3 and put that in the MDL. But yeah, that's the limit. So 40 pages. And we've had students do, there's a big variety. You could do slides and save them as a PDF. You could do a Word document. We're flexible on that, about how you present it.
Thank you.
Darcy, one more question is, eventually, right, once they create these models or these prototypes, right, with these supplies, right, the model, right, could be pretty large size. So I understand one aspect is sending in pics and all pictures and everything, and but then eventually, do we have to get that prototype to a certain location, or will you have in each state you have assessors? I'm just trying to see, do we have to ship that out or bring it along with us, the final model?
So the MDL will just be a document that you can submit online. And then if your team is able to go to one of the live hub events, they might want to bring some, for example, if one of them is to do a lunar calendar, if they built something for that or designed something, they could bring that with them. If they built a model that they want to show off for one of the mission objectives called Life in a Closed System, they could bring that. At the challenge events, we will have the challenge course, which is the biggest thing, the crater thing. So they don't have to bring that. if your team is like super go-getter and they want to practice in the hotel room or something the night before, and they have something they can pack, they're welcome to do that. But they won't be setting up their own course.
I'm not sure they like the sandbox in the hotel room.
No, that's true. That they probably, I would not recommend that. Yes, that's a good point. Okay, any other questions? I'm looking at the list here and seeing if there's anything I did not address. Yeah, the questions that were mailed in are similar to what you guys asked, like what are the first deadlines? So hopefully that was clear in this schedule. Really the only hard deadline is the registration one and then the final submission. There is a question here, can teams participate by taping? So this is for teams that maybe can't make it to, again, an in-person hub event. Yes, you can, we'll have an option for virtually submitting the final challenge. Yeah, I think we addressed all of these other questions.
I have another question, if I may. Can we run the program as a hybrid where we meet in person for certain activities, but we do other activities in hybrid? Because for me, my cadets are spread out throughout Washington and we meet in person only once a month. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep. Yeah. If, again, looking at the mission objectives, if your team has a way to complete separate from one another, just like talking, yeah, that's fine virtually.
Yeah, we can use Google Meet or Zoom or something like that and work together.
Yep, that's great.
Thanks.
I have a question regarding the hub event.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a competition or is it just like to see? My kids are very competitive.
I know. Yes. Mary, do you want to answer this one? I'll let you answer this.
Sure. So the big answer is that we do say it's a challenge, not a competition, because we really are focused on the learning. But if you're thinking about the hub event, right, they do get evaluated, and that evaluation is kind of what leads to the possible prizes, right? So I would kind of try to emphasize to them, you know, it's not a competition the whole way through. You're mostly competing against yourself. But if you do really well, you know, there are more benefits that we can provide, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? No. Okay, going once. Going twice. All right. We'll wrap it up there. Again, as you guys go through the challenge or just get ready for it, you can always ask us questions by emailing us. I should have put this on here. At info, put it here at the bottom. Don't know already. Info at, okay, that's our email. But there are several opportunities, again, as we go through the challenge for you guys to learn about some specific aspects. So you can also be patient for some of the stuff, especially like what the hub is going to look like and what the final challenge map is going to look like. That'll all be revealed at a future date. But yeah, if you guys don't have any more questions, we don't need to take any more of your time.
Thank you, Darcia and Diana. Thanks very much. Good informative session. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll drop.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Guys.
Thanks, guys.
I'm going to stop record.
Okay.
Recording stopped.
And ending the live stream.
All right. Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to make